Well, I hope that you're doing well. Sadly, I know that's not the case for some people. I know some people are sick or hurting in some type of way, and we certainly want to be mindful of those individuals and be lifting their name up before our Father regularly. That's always a tongue twister for me. But if you are good, I'm glad. If you're not, I'm saddened by that, but I hope that you get better, truly. If we can do anything at all for you, we just ask that you would ask us. We don't have any announcements, so we're going to jump straight into the book of Genesis tonight. We're nearing one of my favorite parts in the entire book of Genesis, and that is the Joseph narrative, but we still have some ground to cover before we get there. So we're in chapter 31 right now, chapter 31, and we're going to start in verse 22. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Now, notice that Jacob's deceptive plan has worked, right? He wanted to get his wives and their children out without Laban noticing. Now, you might remember that he has to deceive Laban because even though he's married to Rachel and Leah, don't you just love when you combine two people's names? But he knew that he couldn't just leave with them. That is totally a violation of ancient custom. He would have had to go to Laban, and Laban would have had to say it was all right for them to depart. So Jacob's in hot water here. Well, notice when Laban hears of it, he knows that Jacob has violated the social custom of the day, and he chases him down. Now, this is like a very far journey. We're talking like somewhere around 400 miles. And he goes after him, and eventually he's able to catch up with him. But Laban has every right to fly off the hinges when he sees Jacob. He has every right to I just lost my train of thought. To receive reparations. That's what I was going for. He has every right to do that because Jacob has wronged him. This kind of goes back. Social custom really gets some people in trouble. I mean, this got Jacob in trouble from the beginning, right? When he met Laban, because he tells Laban, "Hey, I'll work for you for 7 years in turn for your daughter Rachel at the end of those 7 years." And of course, the custom is you have to marry the older daughter before you can have the younger daughter, but Laban fails to mention that, and he leads Jacob on, and of course Jacob ends up having to work another 7 years for Rachel after he gets Leah, so 14 years in total. So of course he's in trouble now, but he has every right to be hostile. But notice that God is still protecting Jacob, even though Jacob is still deceiving people. God warns Laban, "Hey, don't get hostile when you encounter Jacob." God is still at work in protecting him. So, and Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me so that I might," notice this response, "so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre." Now just stopping right there, we know Laban. We know how Laban is. You think Laban would have given those things to Jacob? Do you think Laban would have let Jacob go? No, that wouldn't have happened. And Laban is just, being his hypocritical self in the presence of all these people. So, and why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power, notice this, to do you harm. And it certainly is. He's violated the custom of the day. He has a right to get revenge. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now, later on in the story, we're going to come to realize that Laban knows that the reason that Jacob and his wives are safe, the reason that Laban has benefited materially, can't say that word either, is because of Jacob's God. It's because of the one that he serves. Jacob is a beneficiary of the blessings of God, and by extension, Laban is a beneficiary of the blessings that Jacob receives from God. So he knows that this God is not one to be messed with. But now you have gone away because you have longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Now, notice that's quite the charge. Were the household gods important? Yes, you have to remember that Laban doesn't just believe in Jacob's God, the God of Abraham and Isaac. You know, we would say today as Christians, we are monotheistic. There is one God and one God only, and that is the God Yahweh, right? Well, people in the ancient Near East didn't think like this. In fact, we kind of have a misconception as to how they thought about gods, especially God's people in the Bible, because we think that, you'll read about Israel following God and then they'll turn away, right? And they'll follow other gods, all the while serving the God of heaven. And of course, this angers God greatly because they're serving after these false gods. Well, we get this idea that when Israel reverts back to that way of thinking, they're polytheistic because they believe in many gods. But that's not what polytheism actually is. Polytheism is worshiping gods as if those gods are equal. Most of the time, the Israelites, they would have been guilty let me say it like this. Instead of polytheism, we have henotheism. And this is where you have God, you have a main God, but then you still believe in all these other gods under. So the main God, he is superior to all these other gods, but you still serve all these other gods, right? So especially when God doesn't give you what you want, if you want rain to fall from heaven to water your flowers, well, you'll pray to Baal. Or if you want a child and God's not giving you a child, well, you may offer a sacrifice to Asherah, right? Because she's the goddess of fertility. But this goes back to my point, okay? Laban is not monotheistic. He believes in all these different false gods, and the God of the household gods were thought to have provided the family with safety and protection and with blessings. And Laban, being the head of the household, would have received an extra portion, I guess we might say, of those blessings. So this is a great charge against Jacob. But Jacob, notice, answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Now that sounds more like Laban, and probably what would have happened, because Laban seems to always wanting to be one step ahead of Jacob. He's always wanting to exert some type of authority over Jacob. Well, anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. Now, this is problematic because who has the gods? Oh, yeah, Rachel has the gods. And who loves Rachel so much? Oh, yeah, Jacob. So, also, this is kind of problematic for Laban as well, right? In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it. Now, Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Okay, so things are getting intense. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. This just shows us to what great extent Laban went to in order to prove that Jacob was guilty of a crime, right? It's like he destroys Leah's tent. Can't find anything. Okay, first I went to Jacob's tent and like rummaged through his tent. Can't find anything. Now I'll go to the servants' tents. Can't find anything. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now, this is supposed to make our stomachs start churning, right? What's going to happen to Rachel? Is she going to be drug out of her tent and killed? Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. So that's an interesting detail. Now we know what she actually did with the household gods when she took them. And it's pretty clever, right? If you sit on them, it's going to be hard for someone to find them unless they violate your personal space. Well, Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of a woman is upon me." So notice, she knows that, according to custom, when the head of the household comes into the tent, you are to rise, you are to show respect. But there's a bit of a problem, right? Because Rachel is on her period, so she says that she can't rise. Now, this is sort of a little neat detail, I think, in the text that was intentional. The narrator goes through great pain, and I use that figuratively, to make known to us the disgust that he has for idols, right? Where were the idols? Well, they're in the sack on the camel that Rachel would have sat on, and Rachel's on her period. Oh yeah, do you remember what happens when a woman is on her period? Everything that she sits on and touches is what? Unclean. Well, so are the idols now. So we keep reading in verse 36. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me?" So now Jacob's gaining confidence, right? Because he thinks that Laban can't back up the charge that he's made. "For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us." Notice what Jacob says. Whatever you found, lay it out, buddy. Lay it out in front of all these relatives here. And you know what? They'll act as the jury, and they'll charge me if I've taken anything against you. And you'll get what you want from me. But he knows Laban hasn't found anything. But notice he's like, reducing the status of Laban. Laban is no longer the head of the household in front of the relatives at this point. He's the plaintiff that has brought a charge against Jacob. So we keep reading in verse 38. "These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flocks." In other words, Jacob is starting to want to apologize a little bit for taking his daughters without telling Laban. He tells him, "Listen, I took such great care of your flocks when I was with you. In fact, such good care that they never miscarried. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you." Now, notice what this means. "I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night." Now, a shepherd that lost a member of a flock because a wild beast tore up a member of the flock wasn't responsible for that member. That was out of the shepherd's control. But notice Laban was the type to require it from Jacob, whether it could be required or not. But then notice too, if someone steals from the flock in the day, well, the shepherd would have to make a payment to the owner for the loss that he has received. But at night, that's beyond his control. But Laban was the type, again, whether it's stolen by day or night, he expects Jacob to give him something. There I was, by the heat of the day consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I have served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. In other words, look how you've treated me. What was I to expect that you were going to do when I asked you if I asked you, could I take your daughters away from you? Listen, I served you all the time, and the conditions that I served you in were terrible, but I served you for 14 years, then another 6 years, and you changed my wages 10 times. Now, that's not an exact number. That is just to say, like, he was changing his wages all the time. Laban was never a fair guy. He was always looking out for himself. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. In other words, I've been kept safe from you because of the God that I serve. And oh yeah, Laban, you might tell me, I wish you would have come to me so I could have thrown this great celebration before you lost, but you and I both know that you would have left me empty-handed. This is the part that I want to stop because it actually gets into what we need to read next week. So I hope you have a great rest of the week. I can't wait to see everybody Sunday. God bless.